Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're jumping into a topic that's, right at the heart of the fertility journey, especially when it comes to surrogacy, the uterine lining. Look, for so many people, getting those updates on measurements and patterns, it can be a huge source of stress. So our goal here is to take that anxiety and turn it into understanding. We're going to break down the science, the strategy, and the very human side of it all.
I love this analogy, so let's start right here. Thinking of the uterus as a garden, it's just the perfect way to frame this whole conversation. Right away, it shifts our focus from cold, hard numbers to what this is really about, creating a warm, nurturing, receptive home for an embryo to grow. So, to really get what's going on, we have to start with the soil itself. What in the world is the endometrium? And what makes it so incredibly important for a successful embryo transfer? Let's dig in.
Okay, so the endometrium is this really dynamic inner layer of the uterus. Every single cycle, it gets this signal from the hormone estrogen, and it starts to thicken and fill up with blood vessels. Then, another hormone, progesterone, comes in and transforms it into this soft, cushy, nutrient-packed bed just perfectly prepared for an embryo to snuggle in and implant. Now, in a medicated surrogacy cycle, doctors aren't trying to create something artificial, not at all. They're actually using medications to skillfully copy that natural hormonal dance. The whole goal is to get the timing just right, to prepare the soil, that uterine lining, so it's absolutely perfect for the arrival of the seed, the embryo. It's all about synchronization. And this brings us to the part of the journey that can often cause the most nail-biting, the clinical measurements. Doctors have certain benchmarks they're looking for to see if everything's ready. So let's talk about what they mean by an ideal lining. So when the medical team is looking at that ultrasound, what are the key signs they're searching for? Well, it really boils down to two main things. First up is thickness. Generally speaking, most fertility specialists really like to see a lining that's at least 7 to 8 millimeters thick. So why that specific number? Well, tons of research has shown that, statistically, pregnancy rates just tend to be higher once the lining hits that threshold. This really gets at the idea of a Goldilocks zone. It's not just about being thick enough. While anything under 6 millimeters is often considered on the thin side, a lining can also be too thick. Getting over 14 or 16 millimeters can also be less than ideal. Doctors are really looking for that sweet spot, that perfect balance, not just cramming from maximum thickness. The second thing they look for is the structure. This is pretty cool. A receptive lining often shows up with this beautiful tri-laminar or triple stripe pattern on the ultrasound. This layered look, which some people call the coffee bean sign, is just a fantastic visual cue that the lining is responding really well to estrogen and is in exactly the right phase for implantation. But, and this is so important to remember, these are guidelines, not guarantees. An 8 millimeter picture-perfect tri-laminar lining doesn't automatically mean a pregnancy will happen. And on the flip side, a slightly thinner lining doesn't automatically mean it's doomed to fail. These are just helpful signposts that help doctors make the best call. But they're only one piece of a much bigger puzzle. Okay, a question that comes up all the time is, my lining was 9 millimeters last cycle, but this time it's only 7. What did I do wrong? So what's up with that variation? The simple answer is, you did nothing wrong. It is completely 100% normal for things to vary from cycle to cycle. The truth is, a person's body just isn't a machine. Even if you're on the exact same medication protocol, the lining can develop differently. Little hormonal shifts, stress levels, even just how your body happens to absorb the medication that day can all play a part. For surrogates, it is so vital to hear this. You are not responsible for these totally natural changes. So what happens when the lining isn't quite hitting those ideal benchmarks? This is not a failure. It is not a setback. I want you to think of it as a strategic pivot. The medical team has a whole toolkit of different strategies to help optimize the conditions. This slide shows the playbook perfectly. For instance, if the lining is a bit stubborn, a doctor might tweak the estrogen dose, or maybe switch from pills to patches to see if absorption is better. They might add things to improve blood flow. Sometimes they'll pivot and try a natural cycle to work with the body's own rhythm. And you know what? If things just aren't looking optimal, rescheduling isn't a failure. It's a smart, strategic move to give that embryo its absolute best shot. For a really long time, that 7 millimeter rule was treated like a hard and fast cutoff. But science is always evolving. And some recent research gives us a much more nuanced and, honestly, a much more reassuring way to look at this whole thing. Okay, so check this out. A major analysis led by the Yale School of Medicine looked at data from 25 fertility centers all over the world. And what they found is really starting to change the conversation.
So what did they find? The study found that healthy, full-term pregnancies absolutely happened in patients with what were considered thin linings. In fact, they documented successful pregnancies even when the lining was as thin as 4 or 5 millimeters. The big takeaway here is that thickness just isn't the only thing that matters. This quote from the analysis just sums it up perfectly. It means that while doctors still aim for that ideal range, a number on a screen is no longer an automatic red light. This research gives everyone so much hope and flexibility, and it reminds us that it's the bigger clinical picture that really counts. All right, so now that we've gone through the science and the strategy, let's bring it all home by focusing on what's truly the most important part of this journey, the people. Because ultimately, this whole thing is a partnership built on trust. For intended parents, I know it's so easy to hear a number from a lining check and feel like it's the final grade for the whole cycle, but it's so helpful to reframe that. It's not a verdict, it's just a checkpoint. It's a piece of data that helps the team figure out the next best strategic move. At the end of the day, everyone, the surrogate, the intended parents, the medical team, everyone is rowing in the exact same direction. It is a total team effort, and every adjustment, every single decision is made with one thing in mind: creating the absolute best environment for a healthy pregnancy to begin. And that kind of leaves us with this final thought, right? While the science gives us these really valuable targets to shoot for, this journey isn't just about chasing a perfect number on an ultrasound. It's about building a perfect partnership, one that's founded on communication, on patience, and on trusting each other through the process. Thanks so much for joining us.